My life now is quiet, contained, a series of routines that keep the world at bay. I treat dogs with fleas and ear infections, eat meals alone, watch shows about people whose problems seem trivial compared to what I've seen. It's not the life I imagined when I took over Clara's homestead, but it's the one I have, shaped by a dog who chose the wild over me. I don't resent her for it, how could I? She found something greater, something that called to the deepest part of her. And she answered with a courage I can only admire. The footage remains my anchor and my burden. 39 seconds that prove the impossible is real. I watch it to remember, to feel the truth of her choice, to know I'm not crazy. Luna's out there, running through a forest that doesn't know fences, living with creatures that don't bow to human rules. She's free, transformed, part of something that makes our world seem small and fleeting. I'm here, carrying her memory, bearing witness to a choice that redefined everything I thought I knew. Love, I've learned, sometimes means letting go, even when what you're letting go to is a mystery that humbles you. Luna chose the wild, and I choose to live with that, knowing she's exactly where she was always meant to be. This is where my story ends, not with closure, but with acceptance. The homestead will sell someday, its secrets buried under new foundations, its boundaries forgotten by those who don't know to look. Luna's collar will stay on my wall, a reminder of the line between worlds, of a dog who crossed it and left me to carry the truth. I'll keep working at the shelter, saving dogs who might never hear the call she did. And I'll keep watching the footage, holding on to those 39 seconds that changed me. The forest sings its own song, and Luna's voice is part of it. A harmony I'll never fully understand but will always honor. I live for her now in the small ways I can, knowing she's out there, wild and whole, forever beyond my reach but never beyond my love. The security camera footage lasts just 39 seconds, but those fleeting moments shattered my understanding of reality. In the dim, flickering glow of the night vision feed, a towering figure steps into view, hulking, upright, and covered in coarse fur. It reaches down with a hand the size of a hubcap, gently scoops up my dog, Luna, and vanishes into the night as if the shadows themselves swallowed them whole. Luna was 6 years old, a wiry German Shepherd mix with a silver streak down her muzzle and eyes that seemed to see straight through you. She was my anchor, the last tether to my son, Jacob, who'd lost his fight with lymphoma 2 years earlier at 15. Now Luna's gone, taken by something that shouldn't be real, leaving me with a video clip no one would believe and a truth that gnaws at my soul. My name is Elias Morrow, and this is why I abandoned my family's 150-acre homestead in western Montana. Why I can't be near dogs without my chest tightening. And why I leave every window covered after dusk. The homestead came to me after my aunt, Clara, passed unexpectedly last spring, a stroke at 68, leaving no heirs and a will that named me, of all people, as her successor. I hadn't spoken to Clara in over a decade. Not since a bitter falling out over my grandfather's will split the family. Yet, she'd followed my life from afar, through distant cousins and old neighbors, tracking my years as a park ranger, my crumbling marriage, and Jacob's illness that ended in a hospital room filled with machines that couldn't save him. Her lawyer handed me a note in her spidery handwriting. The land needs someone who knows pain and isn't afraid of solitude. The dogs need you most. Keep them safe. I didn't grasp what she meant until I arrived at the property. A sprawling expanse nestled in a valley an hour from Missoula, bordered by dense forest and reachable only by a rutted gravel track that turned to sludge in rain. Clara had turned the place into a haven for stray dogs, mostly hounds and herding breeds discarded by hunters or ranchers. There were 19 of them when I arrived, rangy mutts and scarred veterans, from skittish pups to grizzled old-timers who'd outlived their purpose. The homestead itself was a weathered log cabin, built in the 1940s, sturdy but neglected, with a sagging porch and windows that rattled in the wind. The electrical wiring was a patchwork of old circuits and hasty repairs, and the well pump groaned like it resented being used. Still, the views of the Bitterroot Mountains were breathtaking. A daily reminder of beauty I no longer trusted after Jacob's death taught me that even beauty could betray. The dogs lived in a renovated shed. Clara had turned into a sanctuary, insulated walls, clean kennels, even a small medical bay stocked with supplies I recognized from my ranger days treating injured wildlife. Her records, neatly filed in a metal cabinet, showed she'd rehomed over 200 dogs in 15 years, each with a story of neglect or abandonment. Luna caught my eye the moment I arrived. A note in Clara's files said she'd been found half-starved in a ditch, left by a transient who couldn't keep her. She had a quiet intensity, never barking for attention, but watching me with eyes that seemed to weigh my worth. She followed me everywhere, lying at my feet while I ate, trailing me through chores, sitting beside me as I stared at the stars, fighting memories of Jacob that threatened to drown me. Trouble started in early October, 6 months into my time there. I began noticing tracks around the property large, human-like, but too big, with a stride that suggested something over 8 feet tall. They appeared overnight, circling the shed where the dogs slept, weaving through the vegetable garden I'd planted, and stopping just short of the cabin's porch. I told myself it was a prank, maybe kids from town messing with the new guy, but the prints were too precise, pressed deep into the soil with a weight no human could mimic. The toes splayed in a way that looked almost primate-like, and the pattern showed a fluid, natural gait, not the clumsy shuffle of someone in costume. The dogs sensed it before I did. They grew restless at night, refusing to leave the shed after sunset, their usual playful yips replaced by low whines. Luna, always steady, started pacing the fence line, her ears pricked toward the forest, a faint growl vibrating in her throat. Then came the noises, sharp, resonant thumps, like someone striking a hollow log, echoing from the trees at odd hours. Sometimes a single thump, sometimes a sequence of 5, always stopping when I grabbed the flashlight and my old service pistol to investigate. The forest seemed to close ranks against me, the sounds resuming only when I retreated to the cabin. It felt like something was playing a game, letting me know it was there but staying just out of reach. On October 22nd, I found the garden destroyed. My small patch of carrots and potatoes, carefully tended for months, was uprooted, not eaten, but torn out and left in neat piles, like someone had cataloged each plant. The wire fence around it was bent inward, not cut, but forced open with a strength that made my stomach lurch. In the dirt, scratched with what could have been a branch or a claw, was a rough drawing, a 4-legged shape next to a larger 2-legged one. The message was unmistakable. Whatever did this knew about the dogs, knew they mattered to me, and was making sure I understood its power. I ordered cameras the next day, 8 motion-activated units with night vision, linked to a satellite uplink since cell service was spotty at best. I mounted them around the cabin, the shed, the garden, and the paths leading into the forest. If something was stalking us, I'd have evidence. For 10 days, the cameras showed nothing but wildlife, elk grazing, a coyote skulking past, owls gliding silently. I started to think the threat had passed, that the tracks and noises were a one-off. Luna, though, never relaxed. She'd taken to sleeping inside the cabin, pressed against my cot, her eyes fixed on the door. November 7th was when it all unraveled. I woke to find the dogs crammed into the back of the shed, trembling, their fur matted with sweat. Even Luna, who'd always been fearless, cowered when I reached for her. It took half an hour to calm them enough to check for injuries. None were hurt, but their fear was visceral, like they'd seen something that broke their understanding of the world. The camera footage from 3:12 a.m. explained why. Every dog in the shed snapped to attention, staring at the door in unison. For 4 minutes, They didn't move, didn't blink, just watched something the camera couldn't catch. Then they bolted to the corner, piling over each other in panic. The exterior camera showed the cause. A figure loomed outside the shed, at least 9 feet tall, its body shrouded in fur that seemed to drink the infrared light. It didn't try to enter, just stood there, motionless, for those same 4 minutes. Then it raised a hand, too large, too long-fingered, and pressed it against the door. Not pushing, just touching, like it was marking its presence. After a moment, it turned and melted into the trees with a grace that made my skin crawl. I called the county sheriff, driving to a ridge where I could get a signal. Deputy Sarah Klein arrived, skeptical until she saw the footage. Her face drained of color, and she muttered, "You need to get out of here, Elias. Take the dogs and go." But leaving wasn't an option. The homestead was all I had left after Jacob, after my wife left me for a life that didn't include our shared grief. This place, these dogs, were my reason to keep breathing. I fortified the shed with steel panels and heavy locks, added 4 more cameras, and bought a shotgun with a night vision scope. I reached out to an online group that studied unexplained phenomena, sharing the footage anonymously. Their advice was a mix of practical and absurd: burn sage, scatter salt, or leave offerings of fruit to appease whatever it was. I tried the fruit, leaving apples and berries at the forest's edge. They went untouched, rotting in the frost. The dogs grew worse. Several stopped eating, and Luna lost weight, her ribs stark under her coat. She'd sit by the cabin window, staring into the dark, her breath fogging the glass with each low whimper. The creature or creatures changed tactics. Instead of approaching the shed, they lingered at the property's perimeter, just within camera range, standing like statues under the trees. Sometimes I'd see 2, once 3, their silhouettes blending with the forest until they tilted their heads, catching the light with eyes that gleamed too brightly. The dogs refused to go outside after dark, and I started sleeping in the shed, my cot wedged between kennels, the shotgun never out of reach. Sleep came in fragments, broken by every creak of the shed or rustle in the trees. I was unraveling. My days a blur of feeding dogs by hand, checking cameras, and fighting a bone-deep exhaustion that made me careless, leaving gates unlatched, forgetting to refill water bowls. By late November, I was a ghost of myself, running on coffee and fear. I called my brother in Bozeman daily, not mentioning the creatures but needing his voice to remind me I wasn't alone. He sensed something was wrong and urged me to visit for Thanksgiving, to leave the homestead for a few days. I almost did, even researched kennels for the dogs, but the thought of leaving them felt like betrayal. Whatever was out there had fixated on them, and abandoning them would be handing them over to whatever waited in the dark. Thanksgiving passed in silence, just me and 19 dogs in a shed that felt more like a bunker. I shared a can of beef stew with them, watching the forest through a crack in the boarded-up window. That night, for the first time in weeks, the camera showed nothing, no tracks, no figures, no knocks. I dared to hope it was over, that the creatures had moved on. But Luna's behavior said otherwise. She paced the shed, pausing to stare at the door with a focus that chilled me, like she was waiting for something inevitable. A blizzard hit the first week of December, blanketing the valley in 3 feet of snow and cutting off the gravel track. The satellite internet failed, leaving the cameras recording to local drives. I was trapped with enough food and firewood for maybe 10 days. The snow revealed the extent of our surveillance tracks crisscrossed the property, some fresh, some older, circling every structure. They clustered around the shed's windows, the cabin's back door, even the old well house where Clara had buried her favorite dogs. The ground there was churned, as if something had lingered. Studying the crude headstones, I kept the dogs on a tight schedule, letting them out in pairs during daylight, always with Luna at my side. She'd position herself between me and the trees, her body tense, her eyes scanning the shadows. Her loyalty was a knife in my chest. I couldn't protect her from something I didn't understand. December 12th was a Thursday. The air sharp with the promise of more snow. I'd started planning an escape, calculating how much fuel I'd need to get the truck through the drifts. That evening, I fed the dogs, noting Luna's refusal to eat again. She was skeletal now, her eyes dull but still fixed on the forest. I let them out for a quick break, standing guard with the shotgun. Luna lingered at the shed door, her gaze locked on the trees, her body still in a way that felt like surrender. I locked the shed, checked the bolts, and settled on my cot, the shotgun across my knees. The wind screamed outside, rattling the shed's tin roof. At 10:43 p.m., Luna stood, not with her usual alertness, but with a calm purpose. She walked to the door and sat, her tail brushing the floor faintly, a motion I hadn't seen in weeks. The other dogs watched, some whining, others retreating to their corners. Luna glanced at me, her eyes carrying a weight I couldn't decipher, regret maybe or resolve. Then she scratched at the door, a deliberate motion, asking to go out. I told her to stay, tried to coax her back, but she growled when I touched her, a sound she'd never made before. The other dogs grew frantic, their barks filling the shed with chaos. Then came the knocks, 3 heavy thuds that shook the walls. The dogs fell silent, pressing against the back wall. Luna answered with 3 sharp barks, her tail moving faster, like she was part of a conversation I couldn't hear. I raised the shotgun, aiming at the door, my hands trembling. Luna turned to me, her eyes pleading, and nudged the barrel down with her nose, firm but gentle. "Don't shoot," she seemed to say. The door's lock clicked. Then another, the deadbolt sliding back without a key. The steel bar I bolted across the frame lifted and fell with a clang. The door opened, revealing only darkness. No moonlight, no stars, just an abyss. Luna stood and walked toward it, pausing to look back at me. In her eyes, I saw Jacob, the same quiet courage he'd shown facing his last treatment, knowing it might not save him. She stepped into the dark, and I couldn't move, couldn't speak, the shotgun useless in my hands. The other dogs whimpered, their eyes reflecting the faint light like beacons of fear. Then it appeared, filling the doorway with a presence that made the air heavy. At least 10 feet tall, its fur a shifting mass of shadow, its face too human, yet utterly alien, with eyes that burned with a knowing beyond anything I'd ever seen. It bent to enter, its head grazing the shed ceiling. In its arms was Luna, held with a tenderness that didn't match its size. She wasn't struggling, wasn't afraid. Her tail wagged faintly, her head resting against its chest like she belonged there. The creature's eyes met mine, and my mind flooded with images, not words, but vivid flashes. Luna as a pup, running through fields with a different owner. Luna guarding a child from a rattlesnake. Luna standing watch over Claire's grave. Then the forest, endless, ancient, alive with others like this creature, moving through shadows with purpose. Dogs ran among them, not as prey or pets, but as equals, part of something older than human history. The images showed a bond, a partnership, a recognition of loyalty that transcended species. The creature adjusted Luna in its arms, cradling her like something precious. She looked at me one last time, her tail wagging with what I can only call contentment. The creature turned, and I managed a single word. "Wait." It paused, its eyes locking onto mine again. More images came, the homestead quiet, the dogs safe in new homes, me in a city apartment, alive but hollow. Then another vision, the homestead alive with new dogs, me continuing Claire's work, respecting boundaries I hadn't understood. Luna was the key, the offering that secured peace. She'd chosen this, answering a call I couldn't hear, her sacrifice ensuring the safety of the others. The creature made a sound blow, resonant, neither animal nor human, but filled with understanding. It acknowledged my loss, offered something like gratitude, then stepped into the dark with Luna. The door closed, locks clicking back into place without a touch. I collapsed, the dogs creeping closer, their warmth the only thing keeping me from breaking completely. The morning after Luna vanished, I sat on the shed floor, surrounded by 18 dogs who pressed close, their warmth a fragile anchor against the void she'd left. The camera footage, checked at dawn, showed what I'd witnessed but couldn't fully process. The door opening without force, Luna stepping calmly into the dark, the creature lifting her with care, then both disappearing as if the night itself had claimed them. The video didn't capture the images in my mind. The silent communication that told me Luna hadn't been stolen, she'd chosen to go. Her paw prints in the snow, steady and unhurried beside the massive tracks of her companion, stretched for 50 yards before fading at the forest's edge. No struggle, no fear, just a deliberate journey into something I couldn't follow. I stayed on the homestead through the winter, not because I wanted to, but because the snow trapped me. And abandoning the dogs felt like betraying Luna's sacrifice. The creatures didn't return, honoring the unspoken agreement I'd sensed in that final exchange. The dogs began to recover, their fear easing into a cautious normalcy. They'd gather at the shed door some nights, not whining or cowering, but sitting quietly, heads tilted toward the forest as if listening for her. I'd find them there at sunrise, arranged in a loose circle, their breath clouding the cold air, mourning yet oddly reverent. The tracks in the snow stopped appearing, but the forest felt alive, watchful. I'd catch glimpses of movement shadows shifting just beyond the trees, too quick to be sure. The cameras caught nothing definitive, only occasional blurs that could have been wind or wildlife. I stopped calling my brother, unable to explain the weight of what I'd seen without sounding unhinged. Instead, I threw myself into caring for the dogs, feeding them, exercising them, tending to their wounds physical and otherwise. But every task reminded me of Luna, her absence a constant ache, like a limb I kept reaching for only to find it gone by February. The snow began to thaw, and the gravel track became passable. I started contacting rescue groups, finding homes for the dogs who were ready. Each adoption felt like a small victory, a way to honor Luna's choice, but also a reminder of what I'd lost. I kept the shed fortified, the cameras running, the shotgun nearby, though I knew deep down that the threat, if it had ever been a threat, was gone. The creatures had what they wanted, and I was left to rebuild from the pieces of a life that no longer fit together. I found a note in Clara's files one day, tucked into a folder of veterinary receipts. It was a single page, written in her hurried scrawl, dated a year before her death. They watched the dogs, it read. Not to harm, but to choose. Some belong to them, always have. Don't fight it when it happens. They're older than us, and they understand loyalty in ways we've forgotten. I read it over and over, wondering if Clara had faced the same choice, if she'd lost a dog to the forest and learned to live with it. The note felt like a warning, or maybe permission to accept what I couldn't change. Spring arrived, the valley blooming with wildflowers, the homestead vibrant but hollow. I continued Clara's work, taking in new dog strays with haunted eyes or abandoned hunters too old to work. I was careful though, watching for signs of that same wildness I'd seen in Luna, the way she'd stared at the forest like it was calling her name. Those dogs, the ones who seemed to hear something beyond human perception, I sent to urban homes, far from wilderness where the call might find them. I never reported Luna's disappearance. What could I say? That a creature from legend took her, and she went willingly? That she'd traded her life with me for something I couldn't comprehend? Instead, I told people she died of illness, a lie that was easier than the truth. Nights were the hardest. The forest was never silent owls hooted. Wind whispered through pines, but sometimes I'd hear something else. A low rhythmic cadence that wasn't animal or weather. It sounded like voices, not human, but purposeful, weaving through the trees. Once, I swore I heard Luna's bark, sharp and clear, not distressed but alive, part of that strange chorus. I'd stand on the porch, straining to hear it again, knowing it was her, but also knowing she wasn't coming back. The sound was a gift and a wound, proof she was out there, thriving in a world I'd never touch. I sold the homestead in June, unable to bear its weight any longer. The buyers were a young family from Missoula, eager to escape city life and start a small farm. I didn't warn them about the forest, didn't tell them about Luna or the tracks or the footage that still lived on a hard drive in my duffel bag. How could I? They'd think I was crazy, and maybe they'd never see what I had. The creatures hadn't returned, and the dogs I'd left with them were ordinary, grounded, unlikely to hear the call. Still, guilt gnawed at me as I handed over the keys. Wondering if I'd condemned them to face what I couldn't, I moved to Kalispell, renting a one-bedroom apartment above a hardware store, the hum of traffic replacing the forest's silence. I took a job at a local vet clinic, treating overweight labs and anxious terriers, their problems mundane compared to what I'd faced. My coworkers noticed my distance, the way I paused when a dog stared too long at the window, searching its eyes for signs of something wilder. I never told them about Luna, about the 39 seconds of footage that proved the world was stranger than they'd ever believe. I watched it sometimes, late at night, when the apartment felt too small and the loneliness too big. Each viewing was the same: Luna's calm steps, the creature's gentle hold, the way they vanished like a dream. I looked for clues, for anything I missed, but all I saw was her choice, clear and deliberate. Online, I found others with similar stories, buried in forums about missing pets or unexplained phenomena. Dogs acting strange and gone without a trace. Footprints too large for any known animal. Grainy videos of shapes moving in the dark. The owner's words echoed my own confusion, grief, a desperate need for answers that didn't exist in a rational world. I wanted to reach out, to tell them they weren't alone, but I didn't. The truth felt too fragile, too dangerous. Like speaking it might break the fragile peace Luna's departure had secured. I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Ellen Harper, who specialized in loss. I told her a version of the truth: Luna taken by a predator, probably a bear, during a storm. She spoke of grief's layers, how losing Luna tied to losing Jacob, how my isolation was a natural response to compounded loss. I nodded, let her prescribe pills to dull the edges of my anxiety, but I never told her about the creature, about the images in my mind, about Luna's wagging tail as she left me. How do you explain that your dog didn't die, but chose a life beyond your reach? The homestead's new owners lasted 4 months. The real estate agent, Karen Wells, called me in October, frustrated. The family had fled, leaving behind tools and half-planted crops, muttering about the forest feeling wrong. They wouldn't elaborate, just demanded a refund. I could have told them about the tracks, the knocks, the way the forest seemed to breathe with intent, but I stayed silent. Some things can't be explained, only experienced, and I hoped they'd never face what I had. The cameras I'd left behind still uploaded to the cloud, powered by solar panels I'd installed. I checked the footage weekly, a habit I couldn't break. Most nights showed nothing but deer or the occasional fox. But every few weeks, Luna appeared, always at the forest's edge, her coat gleaming, her movements fluid and assured. She wasn't the dog I'd known. Her eyes held a depth that wasn't canine, wasn't domestic. She was never alone. The creature was there, or others like it, their forms indistinct but constant. They moved together, not as captor and captive, but as partners, communicating in ways I couldn't decipher: gestures, low rumbles, Luna's barks carrying a complexity that hurt to hear. One night in September, she came closer, standing just outside the shed, staring at the camera for 10 minutes. Her tail moved slowly, deliberately, like she knew I was watching. Behind her stood the creature, its scarred shoulder marking it as the one who'd taken her. Luna walked to the shed door, nosed the ground where she used to lie, then turned back to the forest. The creature waited, patient, and they left together, her stride matching its own. I've watched that clip 1,000 times, searching for signs she was forced, but all I see is peace. A dog who found her place in a world I'll never understand. I've read what I can about the creatures, digging through old stories from the Salish and Kootenai tribes. Accounts of forest people who've lived alongside humans for centuries. They speak of dogs chosen, not taken, drawn to a life that echoes something ancient in their blood. Loggers' journals from the 1900s mention dogs vanishing into the woods, later seen running with upright figures. A biologist in the 1970s noted changes in dogs near remote forests. Thicker coats, sharper instincts, like they were reverting to something primal. All dismissed as myth, but I know better. The dreams come every night now. Luna leads me through the forest, showing me glimpses of her new life caves glowing with strange light. Gatherings of creatures and dogs, a harmony I can't grasp. She's trying to tell me she's happy, that her choice wasn't abandonment but fulfillment. I wake with the images fading, the truth slipping through my fingers like sand. Dr. Harper calls it unresolved grief, says I've built a narrative to cope with loss. She doesn't know I've stopped taking the pills, that I need the clarity to hold on to what I saw. What I know, the apartment in Kalispell feels like a cage, its walls too close, its windows too small to hold the vastness of what I've lost. I've been here nearly a year, working at the vet clinic, stitching up pampered pets with names like Bella and Max. Their owners fretting over minor ailments while I checked their eyes for that spark. Luna had the one that saw beyond the leash, beyond me. The 39-second clip of her leaving with the creature lives on a thumb drive in my desk, a relic I can't share but can't destroy. I watch it when the nights stretch too long, when the silence of the city feels louder than the forest ever did. Luna's calm steps, her tail's faint wag, the creature's gentle hold, they're etched into me. Proof of a truth I carry alone. Winter came early this year, dusting the Bitterroot Valley with snow by late October. I drove to the homestead last week, not to check on the property, but to sit in the shed where it happened, to feel the weight of that night one last time. The for sale sign still stands, faded and leaning, the cabin and shed untouched by buyers wary of local rumors. The forest feels different now, quieter, but not empty, like it's waiting for me to make peace and move on. I sat on the shed floor, the dogs long gone to new homes, and listened to the wind, hoping for a sign, a bark, anything to tell me Luna's still out there. Nothing came, but the absence wasn't empty. It was heavy with meaning, like the forest itself was acknowledging her sacrifice. The cameras still run, their solar batteries holding strong. I checked the footage from my laptop, a ritual that keeps me tethered to her. Luna appears less often now, maybe once a month, always at the forest's edge. Her coat thick and wild, her movements a blend of canine grace and something else, something deliberate, almost ceremonial. The creatures are always with her, their forms blurred but constant, treating her as one of their own. In one clip from August, she stood alone for a moment, closer to the shed than usual, her eyes locked on the camera. She tilted her head, a gesture so familiar it hurt, then turned and vanished with a creature that loomed behind her, its scarred shoulder unmistakable. I paused the frame, studying her face, searching for regret or longing, but found only certainty, a dog who'd found her purpose. I've stopped fighting the truth, stopped trying to rationalize it as grief or hallucination. The Salish stories I've read, the old journals from trappers and homesteaders, all point to the same reality. The creatures have always been here, choosing dogs not as prey but as kin, recognizing something in them we've bred out of ourselves. Luna wasn't stolen. She answered a call older than the homestead, older than me. Her choice wasn't betrayal but completion. A step into a life that made her whole in ways I never could. I see it in the footage, in the way she moved with them, her tail high, her eyes bright with a joy I'd never given her. Doctor Harper thinks I'm making progress, though I haven't told her the full story. I speak of Luna's loss in vague terms, letting her believe it was a coyote or a storm that took her. She talks about closure, about letting go of Jacob's death through letting go of Luna. I nod, let her think the pills are working, but I've stopped taking them. I need the sharpness of memory, the clarity of what I saw. The dreams are clearer now. 2 Luna leading me through caverns lit by glowing moss, showing me gatherings of dogs and creatures, a society that thrives beyond our maps. She's not explaining, not justifying, just showing me she's home. I wake with tears, not from sadness, but from the weight of understanding something so much bigger than myself. The homestead's new owners, if they ever come, won't know what they're stepping into. Karen called again last month, saying a retired couple from Seattle was interested, but backed out after spending a night there. They wouldn't say why, just packed up and left, their faces pale as they handed back the keys. I could have told them about the tracks, the knocks, the way the forest watches, but I didn't. Some truths you have to earn, and I hope they never do. The peace Luna secured holds for now, but it's fragile. A balance that depends on respecting boundaries no human can fully map. I've started volunteering at a local shelter, working with dogs too broken for most adopters. They come to me with matted fur and wary eyes, and I see Luna in every one of them, her quiet strength, her ability to endure. I don't take them home. My apartment's too small, my life too narrow for that now. But I spend hours with them, teaching them to trust again, knowing they carry the same potential she did, the same capacity to hear a call I'll never understand. Each one that finds a home feels like a nod to her, a way to keep her sacrifice alive. The online forums still draw me in, late at night when the city's asleep. People post about their dogs vanishing, about strange prints or shadows caught on trail cams. I read their stories, see my own reflected back, but I don't comment. The truth is too heavy, too personal, and sharing it feels like breaking a promise I never spoke. Luna's collar hangs on my apartment wall, a simple leather strap with a brass tag that still smells faintly of her. I touch it sometimes, tell her about the dogs I've helped, the lives I've tried to rebuild. I don't expect answers, but the act of speaking to her keeps her close. Even if she's worlds away, I've accepted that she's not coming back. Not because she's gone, but because she's where she belongs. The creatures didn't take her. They welcomed her, saw something in her that I loved but couldn't fully hold. The footage shows it clearly. Her steady gait, her tail's gentle wag, the way she leaned into the creature's arms like they were old friends. I've stopped looking for ways I could have stopped her. Stopped blaming myself for standing frozen that night. She didn't need my permission to become what she was meant to be, and I didn't fail her by letting her go. I honored her by stepping aside. The forest keeps its secrets, and I keep mine. The homestead stands as a monument to a bargain I didn't make but live by, a line between worlds that Luna crossed willingly. I drive back sometimes, not to stay but to sit on the porch and listen, hoping to hear her bark in the distance, part of that strange ancient chorus. Last month, I left an apple at the forest's edge, not as an offering but as a gesture, a way to say I understand. It was gone the next morning, no tracks to show who took it, but I like to think it was her, a sign she's still watching, still tied to me in some small way.